Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf. If you looked at the intro to the video and title, you might wonder, what the is she talking about? Well, I'll tell you. There's this wonderful podcast called Reading Women. It's run by a booktuber, Kendra Winchester, and a friend of hers, Autumn Privet. And each month they want to promote, books by or about women, and each month they have a selection according to a certain theme, and then they give you recommendations, and they have also book discussion and very, very interesting and fantastic author interviews. And don't worry, everything is linked down below, of course, as always. Anyway, so the Reading Women podcast has a challenge running all year long, Reading Women Challenge. There are 24 prompts. You find them also down below to stimulate people, to read books by or about women, a little bit maybe about your comfort zone, or think about books in a genre or about a topic that you normally wouldn't think about. And now in June, the podcast has its anniversary, and so Kendra and Autumn decided to make June the Reading Women month. And in order, to stimulate that, other booktubers like me will do recommendations for certain prompts or for certain of the challenges. Now, it's not the idea that now all of a sudden in June you're going to complete all those 24 challenges. No. It's just that in June we want to stimulate books by women even more, and the challenges help you or should help you to pick books that you might have otherwise not picked. So today I will make a couple of videos for certain prompts, and Kendra will put them all in a playlist, which is also linked down below, so you can find it easily. Russell over at Ink and Paper Blog, for instance, made already a video about one of the last prompts, the book that has been on your TBR the longest. Sean from Sean the Book Maniac has made a video, recommendations for books by Canadian or Australian authors. So it's just in June, with the hashtag Reading Women Month, we want to stimulate you even more to read books by women. So today's prompt that I want to recommend, books that I want to recommend is according to prompt number 11, a book about a person with a chronic or physical illness. And I have 5 books in total that I would want to recommend to you if you want to do this prompt. And the first one is Vanessa Potter, Patient, age 69, The Story of My Second Sight. This is a memoir. Vanessa Potter was a film producer. She made advertising, movies. She was married. She had 2 children. She had a busy life. And all of a sudden in 2012, she experienced what at first she thought was a heavy flu. She couldn't move her limbs. Then it got worse and worse. She was almost paralyzed entirely. And she, at the height, she got completely blind. So she was hospitalized for a couple of weeks, and after tests the doctors found out that she had a rare disorder which is called neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder, and it affects a certain nerve in the brain, resulting not only in blindness but also in paralysis. Now the paralysis went away rather quickly, but regaining her sight took much longer, and not only that, but at first she could only see black and white, monochromatic. And then she experienced, while regaining also the possibility to see colors, that she had, that she smelled colors. So the book is a really fascinating account of her illness, from the beginning, but also it gives you some insight into the research, into the brain, and when you read this, you realize we don't know shit about the brain and how it works. And it also gives you, because she regained her sight, but it's still, that's why it's called The Story of My Second Sight, it's still a different way of seeing than she had before the illness. It's really well written. It's fast paced, even though it has scientific passages in it where things are explained about the brain. But it's a riveting read and an astonishing story, and I can certainly highly recommend this book. The second book is also a memoir, and that's Toughen American, This Close to Happy, A Reckoning with Depression. And like the previous book, it's very recent, published last year in 2017. Toughen American is an American essayist, novelist, literary critic. She was born in 1954, and she suffered from clinical depression almost all her life. So this is her memoir about her journey dealing with this illness. She goes back to her childhood. She tries to find the root for the depression, but she also discusses ways to deal with it, her personal ways to deal with it. So what I found really interesting about this book was her discussion and her view on the use of psychopharmaca, whether it works for her or not. And the book then goes up to the present, where she is obviously not cured, quote unquote, but where she has found a way to navigate her depression. So if you're interested in that particular chronic illness, depression, then I think Toughen American is a really interesting book. It's well written. It gives also a lot of information and insight, but it's still a very personal account of somebody who has this illness and who tries to find ways to deal with it. And the third book I want to recommend to you is also a memoir, and that's written by Hilary Mantel, Giving Up the Ghost, published in 2003, before she even wrote Wolf Hall. Now, Hilary Mantel doesn't need an introduction. I already said she'd written Wolf Hall. She won the Man Booker twice. But this is her memoir about her childhood, but focusing for a large part on her chronic illness. Hilary Mantel has endometriosis, which is a chronic illness that only afflicts women because it's when the layer of tissue that normally only grows in the uterus grows in other parts of the body. The symptoms are, besides infertility, severe pains. And it's a little understood illness, of course, because it's only afflicting women. Like in research, when the researchers do research about heart attack, most of what they do is researching heart attack in men. Anyway, side note. So it was, and certainly in the 70s, when she started showing symptoms, it was even less understood. And it's an horrifying account how medicine, modern medicine, mind you, because we're talking 1970s, treats women when they go to the doctor and they don't know what's wrong, but they are in severe pain. It took almost a decade for Hilary Mantel to get the right diagnosis, at which stage the illness had already progressed so much that the only treatment that she now can do is the constant use of cortisone. And that not only has severe side effects, but it also is responsible for Hilary Mantel's weight gain. She describes herself that she all of a sudden, she was very slim, very slender woman when she was young, that she all of a sudden had a body twice the size than she was used to having. So she also discusses that, what it means to inhabit a body that you feel is not even yours, and how you have to navigate that and how you deal with that. It's not very long, but it's a very moving book. Like I said, not only about her childhood, but especially about the illness and the way she was treated and the diagnosis. I will also leave a link to a Guardian article written by Hilary Mantel about the illness, and some further articles, just in case, you suffer from that illness yourself, or you know somebody who suffers from that illness, to give you some more information. But for readers interested in memoirs about, a person with a chronic illness, this is certainly a very good pick. And then we move on from memoirs, nonfiction, to fiction, because I thought maybe you would want to read a book fitting this prompt, but you're not that interested in nonfiction or memoir. But there are also novels written about it. And there's one author in particular that I want to draw your attention to, and that's Lisa Genova. And I have her first book here, published in 2007, Still Alice, which deals with a very successful Harvard professor in her 50s who has early onset Alzheimer's. But Lisa Genova is a neuroscientist herself. She has a PhD from Harvard, and she's written, I think, 7 books now, each of them dealing with one particular illness. So she also has written a book, for instance, about autism. So you should, if you're interested in the topic but you want to read novels, you should certainly check out Lisa Genova's work. And like I said, and this is her first book about the woman with Alzheimer's, which is very moving, very heartbreaking, because of course it doesn't have a happy end. It's about a woman in her prime literally losing her mind. And as you can see from the cover, because this is the cover from the movie, it has also been made into a really good movie. But Lisa Genova's work centers around chronic illness, and she writes beautifully, she writes very engaging, so you should certainly check out her other work if you are interested in reading about people with chronic illness in fiction. And the last book I want to recommend to you is, like I said, also a novel, and that is Lionel Shriver, So Much for That, published in 2010. Now, you probably all have heard or read Lionel Shriver, especially her book, We Need to Talk About Kevin, about a school shooting. But I love her work, I have to say right away, and So Much for That is one of my favorite books written by her. The book centers around 2 families. There's one, our main character is a male character who has saved money all his life, because when he reaches a certain age, he wants to take his wife and children to an island in Africa and live the good life there. But just when he's about to announce that to his wife that he now has the money, it turns out that his wife had just been diagnosed with a very virulent and rare form of cancer. So the book deals with the cancer. You get information about this particular strain of cancer. A good friend of Lionel Shriver died from that cancer. That was obviously the reason that she wanted to write the book. But you also have our main character's best friend, and their daughter has a very rare genetic disorder. So the book is all about various kinds of illnesses, but it also focuses, it's a more political book, because it also focuses on the healthcare system in the US. How expensive it is, what kind of treatment you get, because obviously most of the money that our poor guy has saved is going into medical bills. And she asks, Lionel Shriver asks difficult questions like, is it worth it? If you know you have a terminal illness like this cancer, to spend so much time and money and energy on treatments that will in the end maybe prolong your life with a couple of weeks. So there's also this aspect in the book. And there's the friend of our protagonist, he enters the medical world also because he wants to get his penis enlarged or something like. The book is also very funny. It's hilarious. So this combination of a very serious subject, but the humor of the book, which does not at all diminish the severity of the subjects Lionel Shriver discusses, makes it into one of my favorite books. So I can highly recommend it if you want to read a book about illness, but also about the medical system. Then So Much for That is a perfect pick. So these were my 5 recommendations for prompt number 11 of the Reading Women Challenge. I hope you've enjoyed them. Thank you very much for watching, and I also hope that you will participate in June in Reading Women Month, and maybe, continue with the challenge after June. Let me know down in the comments whether you planning on participating, whether you read any of the books I mentioned, or whether you have recommendations, books that deal with chronic illness. I'm always interested to know, and I will see you all soon in my next video. Bye-bye.